Alright, what's up guys? NinjaDeathStrike here, bringing you my very first Magic the Gathering deck tech. Today we're going to be looking at my mono black zombie deck, so we'll get into that in a second, but before we do that, just a quick disclaimer. I just play Magic for fun. I'm not a serious competitive player, so take all advice with a grain of salt, and this deck is not standard legal. It's kind of anything goes. I guess it could be modern. I'm not sure about a couple of the cards, but anyhow, yeah, it's just for fun, and I just wanted to show it off, but I'm not a professional Magic player, so don't take my advice as the word of God. Anyhow, we're going to look at the monsters, the spells, and then the mana base real quick. We'll start over here with the one-drop monsters, and I'll try and get in and zoom in real good here. This deck has 12 one-drops. It's a very fast deck. It just tries to swarm the opponent, overwhelm them. And our first creature is going to be Carrion Feeder. Now, Carrion Feeder can't block, and you can sacrifice a creature to put a +1/+1 counter on it. So, not a stellar creature in and of itself, but it does combo well with several of the other cards in our deck. So, I have them in there for right now, although I would like to cut out a couple. So, if you have suggestions for other good zombies that are black, let me know, and I could maybe cut him down a bit, but our second one-drop is going to be Diregraph Ghoul. It enters the battlefield tapped, but it's a 2/2 for 1, and that makes it good. So coming into play tapped usually is not going to be that big a deal, and it's definitely worth it for a 2-power creature on turn 1. Then finally, our third one-drop, and these are 4 of each, so 12 total, is Gravecrawler. Again, Gravecrawler can't block, but you can cast him from your graveyard as long as you control another zombie, and he only costs 1. So again, 2-power creature for 1 mana, and you can recur him from the graveyard. So he combos very well with Carrion Feeder. You can sacrifice Gravecrawler to make Carrion Feeder bigger, and then recast Gravecrawler from the graveyard. So sorry if you can hear that train, it's really loud. So that's a nice little combo there. Those are the 1-drops. Moving on to our Soul 2-drop. This is another set of 4. This deck's very simple. Runs 4 of almost all the creatures. We have Gnawing Zombie. This is a new card from M14. Just a 1/3, and for 1 black, you can sacrifice another creature and then drain your opponent for 1, and you gain 1. This card is not great, but it is pretty much the only 2-drop zombie. Again, if you have any good 2-drop zombies, please leave a comment. Only black. No other colors in this deck. I'd love to find a replacement for him, but I do think he's the best 2-drop zombie that we have right now in black. And he provides this deck's only defense as a 1/3. So he can block some very aggressive creatures, especially in red, who have 2 power. So he's in there for that. Moving on to the 3-drops, here we get to the real heart of the deck. Some of the powerhouse cards. The first one is going to be another playset of Death Baron. He is a 2/2, and skeleton creatures you control and other zombie creatures you control get +1/+1 and have Death Touch. So this guy not only makes your zombies bigger, he also makes them a pain in the butt to block because they will trade up with bigger creatures. And that's huge for this deck because it has a problem taking down big creatures. You know, these creatures aren't very big, but with Death Baron out there, it allows you to trade up for bigger creatures. So, moving down to our second 3-drop, again we have a 4 set of Geralf's Messenger. This is a rare card from Dark Ascension. He enters the battle play tapped, which is too bad, but as he comes into play, he hits your opponent for 2 damage, and he has Undying. And so that means when he dies, if he doesn't have a +1/+1 counter on him, he goes to the graveyard and then comes back, and he's bigger than he was before, and he does 2 damage again. So this is another combo with the Carrion Feeder. You can sacrifice Geralf's Messenger and deal your opponents 2 damage while making your messenger bigger. So there's another advantage of having the Carrion Feeder in the deck. Moving up to 4-drops, we have only 2, and they're both the Undead Warchief. This is the biggest card in the deck. He doesn't look that big at a 1/1, but when you cast him, zombie spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, so it makes your other guys cheaper. And he also gives all zombies, which is all the creatures in this deck, +2/+1. So he makes your zombies pretty big, especially on the front end, and along with Death Baron, just makes them really, really hard to block. So I do only have 2 because he's a 4-drop and he's at the top end of this mana curve. I thought about putting more in, but I want to keep the curve as low as possible, so I'm only at 2. So that's going to be the creature base. Really, really simple. Pretty much just 4 of everything except the 2 Undead War Chiefs. And then moving on to the spells, there aren't that many, and they all have similar purpose. So the first one is going to be Tragic Slip. I'll zoom in on it a little bit here. So there we go, Tragic Slip for black mana. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, unless another creature died this turn. That's what Morbid is. If another creature died this turn, it gets -13/-13 instead. And again, this is another great combo with Carrion Feeder, because you can sack one of your guys and then either bring them back from the graveyard or make them bigger because they have Undying, and you turn on Tragic Slip, so then you can give one of their creatures -13/-13. And because it's not actually damage, this also gets around indestructible creatures. It's a way to kill indestructible creatures, one of the only ways besides exiling them. So Tragic Slip is just a phenomenal card and definitely a solid 4 of in this deck. Moving down to another removal spell. This one is at 3, but it does have that Phyrexian mana symbol up there. That's what those symbols with the circles and the lines for them. It means that you can actually just pay 1 and then pay 4 life, and it gives target creature -5/-5. So again, another removal spell that does get around indestructible, and -5/-5 is going to be enough to kill most creatures. So this is a really, really good removal spell. Up here at the 2-cost spells, we have Doomblade, which is very simple. Destroy target non-black creature. See if I can get it to focus better. There we go. Very easy. 1 black, kill a non-black creature. Super simple, very cheap. That's why it's in here. We want cheap spells, and this one is cheap. So I split this and Dismember 2/2 because I wasn't sure which one was better, and I like having the option for either, while still having the 4 Tragic Slips. Moving down, our final spell is going to be Sign in Blood, which for black, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. So I really like this card in this deck because not only can it be a way to draw you cards, you can pay the life to draw the cards yourself, which is normally what you're going to do. Your life total is definitely a resource in this deck that you can use to get ahead or to race. So it draws you cards, or at the end of the game, if your opponent is just a few points away from death, you can actually target them and force them to lose their final 2 life. So this is a really strong card in this deck, and that's why I have 3 copies of it. That leaves just the mana base, and the mana base for this deck is very simple. We have 23 Swamps. This is mono black, so making mana is easy. You just play Swamps. 23 might seem a little high for such a fast deck, but my general rule of thumb for building decks is put in the exact amount of mana you think you definitely need, and then add 2. So normally I'd probably play around 21 mana, but following my rule, I started at 21 and then cut 2 things for 2 more lands, because missing your land drops just feels bad. And there are things to do even if you flood out. Again, Carrion Feeder lets you sack your Gravecrawler as many times as you want to make him bigger, so it's not too bad if you get some extra mana. So anyhow, that's the first deck. Please leave comments about what you think about it. I would love advice. Just keep in mind, this is zombie tribal and it is mono black, so I'm not going to change those 2 things about it, but if you have suggestions for spells you think would fit, I would love to hear about them, or just hear what you think of the deck. If you have a similar deck, I'd like to hear about that. Pretty much anything pertaining to this deck. So thanks for watching, guys. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, and I'll have more coming your way shortly. Later.